Welcome in the latest episode of the 5 on the Floor podcast on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Make sure you check out 5reasonsports.com. We have more free content on South Florida sports than anybody. No nasty paywall when you want to read something. Our guy Vishnu, who covers the Canes, has a terrific column about how fraudulent the Miami Hurricanes are right now. So make sure you go check that out. We actually just put it up as we're recording this episode. Also, check out the other podcasts in our network: 3 Yards Per Carry, 5 Rings Canes, Light Skinned Opinions, Balls Cast, Fantasy on 5, and others, including the Shula Bowl podcast, which should be great this week, considering FIU was the only team to win in this market. Panthers, Heat, Canes, Dolphins. Clean sweep the other direction. So today what we're going to do after I introduce you to one of our sponsors is I'm going to let 2 guys on the podcast argue. So you should enjoy that. But first, before we do that, I want to tell you about a great sponsor of the 5 Reasons Sports Network, and that is East Coast Public Adjusters. East Coast Public Adjusters wants you to know there's only 10 months left to open your IRMA claim. That's right, 10 months. So call now before it is too late. 855-GET-ECPA. That's 855-GET-ECPA. You have a leaky roof, experiencing plumbing issues. These problems are most likely covered by your insurance policy. So why would you settle for less? For a free, no-obligation inspection, call East Coast Public Adjusters. They've been in business for 31 years. That's since 1988. That's right, the same year the Miami Heat were born. Here is the number again, 855-GET-ECPA, 855-GET-ECPA. Visit their website, ecpaclaims.com. Their knowledgeable staff standing by to answer all of your questions. And now, on with today's episode.
Welcome to 5 on the Floor, a Miami Heat and NBA podcast from Ethan Skolnick with Alphonse Sidney, a.k.a. Alf954. Brought to you by the 5 Reasons Sports Network.
All right, Ethan Skolnick back here. We're recording this on a Sunday night. So our last podcast was actually prior to the Bulls and 76ers games. So we're going to try to cover a little bit of those here. Obviously, if you want to listen to Tim Bontemps' episode, which got a lot of attention, it turned out Tim was right, actually, about this particular game. Maybe not about the entire season, but about this particular game and types of challenges the Sixers are going to provide for the Heat. But I'm going to acknowledge before we start today, I did not watch the game live. I was at a wedding on Saturday night, so I was just checking score updates. And then I would put the phone down because of how bad it was. Lucky me. But I was monitoring the discussion on text as well as Twitter, as well as our DM string, between Alex Toledo, Tropical Blanket, who has not spoken as of yet, and Alphonse Sidney, who just broke in. You can follow him at Alf954. And I'm going to do something I don't typically do here on the podcast. I'm going to get the hell out of the way today. I'm just going to get out of the way. And the reason I'm going to get out of the way is because these guys have 2 totally different perspectives on what Saturday night meant. So I don't even really want to cover the Bulls game. They've beaten up on a lot of bad teams. The Bulls are another bad team. They did the same thing they typically do against bad teams, which is run out early and then kind of hold on for dear life as they commit a torrent of turnovers. We're going to focus more on the Sixers game. So I'm going to start here with this very simple question, and I will start with Alex because I know Alpha's going to shout him down. Alex.
We'll see.
Right? Alex, what did not last night, well, it is last night, but by the time people listen to this, what did Saturday night mean in your view in terms of how we should evaluate the Miami Heat right now?
So it's funny that you mentioned the whole beating up on bad teams thing. And I honestly think that this weekend kind of does a pretty good job summing up what kind of team the Heat are at this moment, right? They're better than we thought. The fact that they've been beating up on bad teams over and over and over again shows that's an indicator of a good team. We talked about it before, and I think they're a good team. I think they're better than we thought they're going to be. The offense is better than we thought it was going to be, which is, made them a more realistic playoff contender than we thought maybe from before because, the defense has been elite regardless. The problem is when you go up against these elite two-way teams like we saw with the Lakers and like we saw last night with Philly, you get outmatched. And I don't that's any type of overreaction because of what we saw. I think it has more to do with the role players, right? So a lot of these role players are not going to shoot as nearly as well as they do in other games versus these types of teams, right? Like we saw it versus the Lakers as well. And last night they could not hit a single shot. They completely found a way. Like the game plan now going forward is going to be, sag off of Bam when he's doing that whole initiating from the elbow and get teammates going while they're all running around him, kind of like what the Nuggets do with Jokic. Teams have figured out that you sag off of him and you play the pass every time. And like you'd rather have him shoot that shot and go and look for his own shot than give up an easy cut or an easy three. And I think, the Sixers, between their size and between, their defensive personnel, it's a terrible matchup. I kind of expected them to lose that game, coming off a back-to-back on the road in Philly. But, man, the fact that they couldn't even keep it close from start to finish, it's tough, right? Like, Spo said it the night before. We want to see what kind of team we are. And I think we saw the team they are. They're a very good team. They're just not quite on that tier of these elite teams in the league.
It's just funny to me. All of a sudden, this game is what encapsulates the entire season. It just honestly is so asinine and so stupid to me. I'm sorry, Alex. I'm really sorry. They're going to struggle against elite two-way teams. Everybody struggles against elite two-way teams. That's what happens when you play an elite two-way team. So let's get this.
So they are classified under everybody then, and not elite.
First of all, I don't think anyone on this podcast is called the Heat elite.
Yeah, you're right.
At all. So now, do we also? I don't even know if the Sixers are elite right now, because over a 15-game sample size, the Miami Heat are better than the Philadelphia 76ers. The Miami Heat haven't had the letdown games the 76ers have had, but all of a sudden, this game is what encapsulates the entire season. That's what's just dumb about this whole argument. Also, I don't know what they did off of Bam is great, but not every team has Joel Embiid, right? So yeah, Joel is a bad matchup for the Heat, but the Heat also didn't have their starting point guard, which I've beaten the drum over this over and over again. Justise Winslow is hugely important to this team. So you don't have Duncan Robinson guarding Tobias Harris and Ben Simmons in the first quarter. So we
definitely agree there.
In totality, like, this game means nothing, because the Heat had a ton of wide open shots, the same wide open shots they've been hitting against everybody else. Was it the Sixers' aura that made them miss these shots? Was it the Joel Embiid's cologne that they just couldn't make these open shots? Duncan Robinson all of a sudden turned into a guy who can't make shots? Or was it a back-to-back on the road in Philadelphia, one of the best home teams in the Eastern Conference? Like, it's just completely asinine. We take these one-game samples in November and decide that this game is where we evaluate who the Heat are. Like, and it was like, oh, Eric Spoelstra said the day before, this is going to be a big test. Who cares what Eric Spoelstra said? It's coach speak. 98% of the time, we ignore what coaches say. But this one soundbite, we're like, oh my God, it was so important. It was important to us because we're fans and we're emotional. But at the end of the day, what's important to the game is an L in the loss column. It counts as much as the Timberwolves game, as much as the Lakers game, and as much as the Nuggets game. So on this season, they've had 3 losses on back-to-back road games and 1 traveling east to Denver. If we really want to talk about the Heat, that is super impressive. We don't need to cry about a 30-something point loss against Philadelphia. Like, everyone should have known this was coming. When after the last loss, I forgot who they lost against.
The Laker game.
The Laker game.
Yeah.
I said on Twitter, there's a 5-game win streak, right? They won 5 in a row. Did I say 6 games? No, because I saw it was a back-to-back in Philadelphia, and I'm not stupid.
Alstradamus.
Yeah, I'm not dumb.
You need a T-shirt. Just like, by the way, you can go to the 5reasonsports.com right now, get our new BAM VP shirt. Couple things I want to get to before, again, I pass it back off to the two of you. The first thing about this is, and I made this point to Alex on our text string yesterday, I mean, if the Heat go into Houston, right, and get blown out after they blew out the Rockets, then what does that first game mean? And the point I think that Alf's making here is, like, Philadelphia comes in here, in a month, right? And he could blow the doors off them just being at home. And so I
predicted the Heat are going to probably win that game by 20.
I would agree with you there. I think they're going to win that game.
So
I don't know about by 20.
Which game is indicative?
No, but you see, that's the thing, man. That's going to be what I'm going to go back at you about. I think you're trying to put me out as sort of like a symbol of all the Heat fans, maybe on Twitter or not on Twitter, who are kind of just overreacting to this game. My thing is, I expected this game to be competitive. I was let down from start to finish. I don't think this is indicative of their season. I think this is indicative of them not being able to go up against some of these bigger, tough matches. When you mix, not that Philly has been this unstoppable team. I just think from the start, I've been saying since the summer that this is not going to be a good matchup. I would like it to be. I do not like the Sixers. I like the Heat to beat the Sixers. But it's not a great matchup. And I think, yeah, you're right. Not everybody has Embiid. But I do think that's going to be something that gets used, that defensive game plan that I mentioned before is going to be something that gets used going forward.
But see, my thing is,
not that this is the end of the season or anything. I just think they're not on that level in matchup-wise, right? Like
Alex,
it's a big matchup problem for them.
What is the take? Is the take that the Heat are going to have a tougher time against good teams than bad teams?
No.
That's not even a take.
No. Alf,
They were down 30 the whole game. Like, yes, they were missing shots all over the place. More players missed threes on the road. Like, I get it. It's not that the one game sample is indicative of everything. Obviously, they didn't play as well as they do in other games, even against other good teams. Like, they beat the Bucks without Jimmy. I'm not saying they have no shot against elite teams. I think Philly is a particularly bad matchup. Last night was a bad game, but I do think like it told us they're not right on that level. I think. But
you're making two different arguments. Alf, let me jump in for a second. You're making two different arguments here, and Alex, I agree with you that about one more so than the other. I think Alf's point, that they're not, you saying they're not on that level. Again, if you go through 15 games, they are on that level. In fact, they're playing at a higher level than Philadelphia for the season, right? Their net rating, even after last night, is still better, right? But
so is Boston, right? Like,
no, I understand.
What are they doing?
But I think the bigger point that, and again, they went up to Milwaukee and won without Jimmy, as you said, when they were down 20. So are we going to say now that the Bucks aren't on the Heat's level? I'm not. I don't want to go that far with it.
Very small. They have four guys. They have three guys at least who are smaller than the smallest guy.
But that's the point that I agree with you on. Okay, I think to say they're not on their level from an overall perspective as a team, I don't think you can draw that conclusion from just last night. I just don't. And I think the conclusion you can draw from last night is that Philadelphia presents unique problems to them that I do think are going to crop up if they see him in a playoff series. And I think the point that Alf made, because of their size, it's just simple. It's because of their size. Okay. Right. And we talked about that, and Bontemps talked about that, and we've known about that. They're the biggest starting lineup in the league, and they're multidimensional with that starting lineup. I still don't love their bench, but they're multidimensional with their starting lineup when Josh is the smallest guy that they've got. But I think it's a matchup thing, and I think what Alf is hitting on, and this is the bigger point with the Heat going forward. We have talked about all these different combinations that Eric can use, right? And then we had a bunch of Heat fans jump on they're better without Justice bandwagon, right? Because of what this starting lineup did over the course of about 100 minutes. But I think we have seen against certain teams, there are certain players that are absolutely critical. And Justise Winslow last night, maybe not in some of these other games we've seen, but against the better teams, okay? Against the Lakers, against the Sixers, Justise Winslow is necessary. To me, that's what I would draw from it. So I don't think it's that they're not on their level overall. I don't think the first 15 games have borne that out. I think it's a matchup problem, and I think what it also shows is, all right, maybe Justice isn't for everyone, and maybe he's not for every team or every matchup. But for that matchup, like we saw Justise Winslow against Philadelphia, okay, in the playoffs. They need Justise Winslow in that matchup. Alf, would you agree with that?
Because you got Duncan Robinson out there trying to match up with it's when the Sixers had their full 5-man starting lineup on the floor. The Heat could not do anything against that team because they only had one shot creator. Because as much as I like Kendrick Nunn, he creates a shot for himself, but nobody else. So they had one playmaker. They had Jimmy Butler. What you want is two guys consistently attacking that at defense. They didn't have that. All they had was Jimmy Butler. And on the other side, you want Justise Winslow matched up with Ben, so that Jimmy Butler can match up with Bias or match up with Josh Richardson. You want to be able to cross-match. You want to be able to switch. You couldn't do any of that stuff because you had Duncan Robinson out there, and you're just praying that he just doesn't get lit up, right?
So that's my thing. Is like, at the end of the day, right, you were talking about Kendrick Nunn, how he only looks for his own shot. And why the problem that you're talking about right now, right, that they need two guys to penetrate the defense and try to get their own shot every time. Why hasn't that been a problem before, right? Obviously, because they have been going up against these types of things. It's not going to be a problem versus these low-level teams that they've beaten in recent games. But besides that, they're relying on guys to hit their shots. That's what it comes down to, right? How do they hit their shots? After executing a certain amount of actions in the offense, right? It hasn't been Jimmy dribble, find a shooter. It's been, this complex offense that they've been running. And that stuff, I think, that has more to do with what went down last night, right? I think versus some of these bigger teams, versus some of these defensive-minded teams, they're going to take that away a lot. I think the Heat don't have a counter for that, especially if the team has a great rim protector. Right? Obviously, I think you guys are 100% dead on with the fact that the Sixers are a unique matchup, right? Like no other team is exactly like them. They're very unique. They're small guys. Jay Rich, who's like 6'5", 6'6". Everybody else is 6'8", 6'9", or up. Embiid is 7'3". Yes, they're extremely unique. And yes, the Heat have outplayed them throughout the first 15 games of the season. My thing with the Heat not being on their level, quote unquote, has more to do with, coming into the season, projecting the rest of the season. I think the Sixers are, as much as I don't want them to succeed, I do think they're going to end up, with one of those best records in the league once they figure out their offense. And I just don't think, the Heat are better than what we thought, but I don't think the 12-game sample is indicative of the Heat being a better team than the Sixers.
We saw the Sixers shoot like they haven't shot really this whole season yesterday. Josh Richardson did things on Saturday night that he hasn't done pretty much all season. So there's a lot of outlier crap going on over there on the other side, but nobody talks about that. What the Sixers did was, this is what they are. No, that is not what the Sixers are. But what the Heat did is what they are, which also that's not what the Heat are.
Right. I agree with you, though. I agree with you.
That's what I'm saying. That game last night was just, if you look at both teams on the course of when you look at the entirety of the season, the teams do have the Heat are right up there with the Sixers. I don't think the Sixers are that elite. Like, honestly, I think the only elite team.
But Alf, it is a matchup thing, and I think let's go. I don't even think it matters where the Sixers are seeded. Frankly, I think I think we've all established that the Heat are a playoff team, right? And there were some who didn't even believe that before the year. We've established, I think, too, that they're in this kind of second tier in the Eastern Conference with the potential to get in the first tier. The question then becomes, what teams, because the playoffs, and Bontemps, I think, hit on this, and I thought Heat fans were a little unfair to Tim. In the reality, Tim, I thought on the podcast, he pushed the Sixers, yes, but he also was very high on the Heat and said he had him top 5 before the season. But the point he made that I agree with, and I think this plays to Alex's point a little bit, is that, when you get into a playoff series, you play fewer guys, right? And so you already have a matchup issue with Philadelphia as currently constituted. The two teams as currently constituted because of the size, because of Embiid's versatility, Horford's versatility, and all of that. The fact that Josh Richardson is a quality defender, you have a matchup issue with them. And then it gets worse in the playoffs because they're going to play, whereas you may have more of an advantage in the regular season because, each team's playing 9-10 guys. When you get into the postseason and you're playing 7 or 8, majority of the minutes, then you're going to get those 5 guys playing 38 minutes a game or more. And so I do think it's a matchup problem with them. Now, we haven't seen the Heat against Toronto. We've seen the Heat against Milwaukee. And I almost kind of want to throw that game out because it was such a weird game. I mean, you didn't have Jimmy. You were down 25 and all the rest. But we saw the Heat match up fine with Houston. They're considered an elite team, right? The Laker game, I thought there was a matchup issue, but a lot of that was sort of end of the road trip. I think we have to see the Heat against all of these teams. I think the point here, though, getting back to the Heat, we're going to see the Heat against Charlotte. Alex and I and Chris Maddox are going to be down there. My guess is they blow Charlotte out, okay? But the thing that I think you have to look at going forward is this is going to be a task for Eric Spoelstra deciding on matchups because he's going to have to keep guys happy. And I don't think there's going to be one starting lineup for this team this year, guys. I just don't. I think there's just certain matchups that they're going to need Justise Winslow, and there's other matchups they may need Kendrick Nunn, and there's other matchups they might need Duncan Robinson.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I think the one thing, I agree with Alf in the sense of all the chaos of, the Sixers hitting a million shots, the Heat missing a ton. It is chaos, right? Especially in a one-game sample. It's 100% chaos, just like when the Heat blew out the Rockets. Even though I do think that's a better matchup. The Rockets are definitely good. They're very, very good. But it's 100% a better matchup, right? And I would even say that the Bucks are a better matchup, again, because of what I mentioned before, right? Like the Bucks don't have that size at every single position where they're just going to bludgeon you every time. Justise would have been extremely helpful. I definitely agree with that because he definitely helps out with that size part. But to me, again, it comes down to the guys that have been great for them so far and that have helped their offense be in the top half for pretty much the entire season. Duncan Robinson, Kendrick Nunn, Hero. Those guys in the playoffs, I think they're going to need to hit every single one of those shots. And I forgot to mention Myers Leonard. I think those are the types of guys who, it varies between each of them. Like, I wouldn't necessarily put none or even Hero on the same, but like Duncan Robinson and Myers Leonard, for example, all of those guys as a collective are guys that they're relying really, really heavily on. And I just don't think they can be effective in, over a 7-game series to the same level that they have so far. I think the team that they've been in the regular season is a very good team. I do believe that they're a very good team, but that level that they've gotten to is dependent on their 3-point shooting. Like, I know Bo didn't like what I said, but they were first in true shooting coming into this game. They've been top 3 in 3-point shooting throughout the season, and I think that's something that's going to go down once you go against these bigger teams, these teams that defend better. And I know Alphonse doesn't really buy the Sixers as elite, and I get that, right? Because they haven't proven it yet. They have to go out and prove it still. I do believe that they're going to end up being elite, but yeah, I just think that game plan where they're hitting all these shots is a great game plan. Spo has done a very good job to maximize these guys. But I think there is a cap there, and I think that's going to get exposed more in the playoffs, in a series where once you figure out what the other teams do, like, I don't think the Heat have enough counters.
Yeah, I also don't think that what we've seen from the Heat in the first 15 games, relying so heavily on Duncan Robinson, Tyler Hero, is going to be the same thing when Justise Winslow and Derrick Jones Jr. are back in the lineup. I think you're going to see more from those guys, and I think Kelly Olynyk has not done anything yet. And I think we all expect a lot more from Kelly. I don't know whether James Johnson's ever going to be back in this lineup full time.
Well, let's hit on that. Let's hit on that. You know what? Let's do that after the break because there's some matchup stuff that I want to get to. The James Johnson thing to me is fascinating at this point, so we'll hit on that here in a second. But first, I want to tell you about another great sponsor of the 5 Reasons Sports Network. That's the Seltzer Mayberg Law Firm. You can find them at onecalllegal.com. That's onecalllegal.com. And why would you go to Seltzer Mayberg? Because they got somebody there 24 hours a day on that website. They're based in North Miami, but they handle cases from all over the state: immigration, personal injury, traffic tickets, which is a specialty of theirs. They took care of mine, a couple times now. I probably shouldn't acknowledge that. But definitely check out Seltzer Mayberg. We actually share an office with them in North Miami. Eric, Mendy, David, great people down there. I always forget to mention Joe, so I apologize to Joe. But check out Seltzer Mayberg Law Firm. Also, another sponsor of the 5 Reasons Sports Network, and that is Dutch Valley Farms. What's Dutch Valley Farms? Not your average cannabis grow farm. They've got deep roots in the 305. Hometown group of doctors, CPAs, and Silicon Valley professionals have taken their talents from the 305 to the 503 to make you the finest flower out there. How does Miami find its way all the way out in Oregon? Simple, a team with a shared belief in cannabis research and erasing the stigma behind the bud. Today, the Dutch Valley Farms crew is bringing together old school growing practices with new school tech to deliver a consistently clean, high quality experience you can feel good about. The proof is in the plant. You want more information? Visit DutchVF.com or follow them on Instagram at Dutch Valley Farms. And before we get back to these two guys arguing, we got a watch party coming up Wednesday night, so you can argue with us in person. I will be there for at least the first half. These guys should be there for the duration. Heat, Rockets, so we can see.
Alf might be there longer.
Alf might be there longer. Yeah,
most likely I'll be. Most likely I'll close the place.
That's typically the case. This is like if you haven't been to this Duffy's, there's a lot of Duffy's that are pretty cool, but you got to think totally differently because this one is right on the water. It's beautiful. They give us the outside, like this little area. They're going to put up the projection TVs. We're going to have food. Obviously, you can get the drinks that you want to get, and it's just going to be a great time. We got some T-shirt giveaways as well. So check it out. We are 1-0 in our last one watch party, and hopefully we can extend the streak. All that matters.
Like we talked about, these one-game samples are everything. That's all that matters.
Right, and this is the one that if you're married, this is the one your wives will let you go to, because the next week we've got one at the Gold Club in Pompano. But anyway, let's get back to some of this rotational stuff, right? This is just going to be a fascinating thing with this team the whole year. And I don't want to speculate on what's going on with James Johnson, so let's not do it, okay? Because I've seen some stuff on Twitter and speculation about kind of why this is happening. But he's still not playing. And he didn't play last night or Saturday night in a 40-point blowout against a team with size. Are we wrong? Are we not going to see James Johnson at some point this season in some kind of a role? Because I think all three of us have felt there was a role for him.
Well, you know what's funny? And what I will say about some of the things that Alex is talking about, that we're relying on guys, or I can't say we anymore. Ethan wants me to be professional. They're relying on guys.
No hope of that. No hope.
No, not at all. I got to stop cheering in press row.
See, edit that out. Okay, we'll take you behind the scenes here a little bit on this. All right, I have These guys, I brought them down to the Heat games, and they've been very professional, particularly Alex. But Alf, like, I mean, seriously.
I'm on time, at least.
Yeah, same thing.
That's true. Alex shows up for the next game instead of the one he's supposed to be at. But the only thing I've said to Alf is, look, obviously you can't look. I've been a journalist for 25 years. I still pretend to be. Okay, so you can't wear Heat gear, right? So I think I've gotten that through to the two of you. But Alex is sitting there taking copious notes during the game, and Alf lets out a fist pump. I'm like, that can't happen anymore.
Okay, it was the first game.
It can't happen anymore.
It was the first game. I let out a little yelp when Myers Leonard hit a three. Ever since then, I've been quiet. But I think it was the second to last game I was at. It was that crazy sequence when Tyler dunked. They came back. Duncan Robinson hits a three at the buzzer before half. Like I did two claps. That was it. Dude, you got gives me the sharpest elbow in the ribs.
Because you got look, I was there, okay, for Ray Allen hitting the shot in the corner, right? And the only thing I said was MFer because I had to rewrite my column on Deadline. You got to start thinking like a cynical sports writer now. You cannot you cannot think like a fan. I mean, yes, on Twitter you can, but in that no. Okay,
wasn't that bad. I've not been that bad. No. I wear a sports coat to the games now.
Yeah, you do. That's true. That's impressive.
Yeah, Alf looks like an adult and behaves like an adult for the most part when he's there. I'm over there and everybody's like, how did this kid sneak into Media Row?
Who's this child? Anyway, so
can we touch on that too? I'm sorry. Yeah. We haven't played that clip, have we?
What clip?
Of Spoelstra dunking on Alex.
Oh God.
Do you want to play the clip, or do you want me to just take people through it?
Yeah, you can take people through it. I can insert it.
Well, why don't you tell us? Why don't you tell us what happened here?
All right. So I just asked Spo a question. Basically that came down to what's the contrast been like between this year and the past few years, as far as how good and elite for the most part the 3-point shooting has been, and he kind of took it as a slight. I think a little bit. He was a little bit defensive. He started off the quote saying something like, there's a long disagreement. I won't waste my breath on it, before he proceeded to waste his breath. And, he said basically that they were top 6 or 7 last year until the last 6 weeks of the season.
That's actually true. That's accurate, Alex.
Yeah,
they were. I mean,
they missed the playoffs because of that.
No, well, right. They'll tell you they missed the playoffs. Goran missed 2 months, but right.
Spo, what's it feel like now to have a team full of guys who can shoot every time they're given the ball, whereas the past couple of years you guys have been kind of inconsistent from that area? You've been comfortably top 5 in 3-point percentage and I think top 10 in 3-point attempts since day one of this season. How do you feel about that and the contrast with the last few years?
Yeah, I don't know. That would be a longer disagreement that I probably don't need to waste my breath on, because 2 years ago we had really good 3-point shooting. And last year we were, I believe we were in the top 6 or 7 until the last 6 weeks of the season in 3-point shooting. You're just seeing the ball go in right now, from some of our guys that have an ignite ability to it. So it's making you pay attention more. And our bigs obviously stretch the floor in space in a different way maybe than we've had before. But the ball's moving and we're getting to coherent actions that create the space, and then the ball can move where it's those inside out threes or extra pass from good to great threes that most competent NBA players can make those at a high percentage.
Why don't you tell your side of the story?
And shout out Alex Solana from 790 to Take It, brought me on the other day to talk about it. But yeah, I thought he was being a little bit defensive. I looked up the numbers the other day, and again, they're top 3 in 3-point shooting percentage, number 1 in true shooting. The past few years, like last year, I think they were 25 or 26 in true shooting, and which measures other things as well. But their 3-point shooting percentage has been 15 or lower in pretty much every single season the past 5 years. So I don't think it was out of bounds. I think probably should have butted them up a little bit more in the sense that they have been good at generating those good looks and generating open looks. So I think I might not have gone in on that part enough.
Well, yeah, he doesn't typically jump on people, but I will say there's a little sensitivity towards talking about the past few years. They don't really like to talk about it anymore. Like it's over with. So I get where I get where you were going, but he'll be fine with you. It's
that was the first negative interaction I've had with him.
Oh no, and look, I've covered him since since 1996, and no, he doesn't hate him. See, I've had interactions with him that have not always been ideal, but you move on to the next day. That's how this thing works, and then Alex
take it on the chin, yeah.
Right, you take it and you move on, and then after the Heat. I wrote a column on the front page of the Sun Sentinel after the Heat made all those trades, after the Riley made all those trades during the 2005 offseason. Basically, because I had a relationship with Eddie Jones, I was sort of sorry to see him go, but I didn't really like the trades that they made, which was the Anthony Walker, Jason Williams, the Gary Payton acquisition, the James Posey I liked, but the other ones I didn't like, and I kind of wrote a column ripping Riley for the moves. I said he panicked. Which is actually inconsistent with what he'd done with previous teams, like the late 90s teams where he waited a long time to break up a group. And I said, I thought, maybe he should have given that group a little bit more time. And so I basically said they were never going to win a title with that group. And so, of course, when they advanced to the finals in 2006, I was sitting in the front because that's what you got to do. You got to show up the next day or the next year or whatever. And I was sitting in front row, and Riley, one of the first things he mentioned, my friend Louis Zabala sent me it was on VHS. He had it. Sent it to me. That's how old this. You remember VHS? Alex? Probably not.
Alex doesn't know what that is.
Probably. VHS, by the way, is the last time that the Sixers competed for a championship. But basically this interaction occurred where Riley reminded me that they were never going to make the finals when they made the finals. So it happens. It happens. But let's get back to rotation stuff here.
Old takes exposed.
Right. Well, that was like the ultimate old take.
I had a point about the rotations before.
Yeah, we were talking. What was the point about?
I forgot now. No. My point was I do agree with Alex that some of these guys that the Heat are relying on right now, it's untenable for when it comes to the playoffs, because there's too many guys right now that if they aren't giving you what you expect on one end of the court, they're just complete liabilities out there. So if Duncan Robinson isn't hitting threes, if Kendrick Nunn isn't scoring in the paint,
Myers
Silva isn't being a defensive presence, Myers Leonard isn't shooting, Myers Leonard isn't scoring, and he isn't being imposing in the paint, like they're just not giving you enough on the other end.
But isn't that the case with a lot of teams? Like they're always like when you get to the playoffs, there are certain guys, and particularly in certain matchups, that you play during the regular season, and they're just not playable in the playoffs, or against a certain team, and it's like, okay, you have to. That's the chess match, right? And that's. But
that's why I think it's so hard to evaluate the Heat right now, because I think we Ethan, me and you talked about it all summer long. Mm-hmm. After they acquired Jimmy Butler, it was about Jimmy, Justice, and Bam, and it was filling the other two spots no matter who it was. But it was supposed to be about what those guys can do offensively, mm-hmm. and more importantly, what they could do defensively. We haven't seen them yet. Right. We really haven't.
And it was clunky offensively with Jimmy and Justice together. And
it was clunky at first with Jimmy and with Justice and Goran together. But we've seen now Justice and Goran together actually looks really, really good.
Right. So but I'm confident enough, though, and we got to close here soon, but I'll go to Alex here. I'm confident enough that Justice and Jimmy are smart enough and their relationship is good enough that they're going to figure some of it out. They just need reps. They haven't had reps. That's the problem. But for people who were saying, like, oh, Justice is going to be out of the rotation or back into the rotation, Justise Winslow was leading the Heat in minutes when he went out. Okay? He's not going to go from leading the Heat in minutes to the 9th or 10th guy. I'm sorry. Like, whatever issue people have with Justice as a player, it's just not going to happen. And I think we circle back to this. Justise Winslow is a guy who's going to play against everybody. Like in the playoffs. Like Duncan Robinson may not, Myers Leonard may not, Kelly Olynyk probably will, but may not. James Johnson clearly may not. There's a lot. Derrick Jones Jr. may not, right? Derrick Jones Jr. may be a regular season player, but we haven't even seen him in the regular season this year. But Justise Winslow is going to play in the playoffs. I'm sorry. If he's not traded, he's going to play a lot. So the Heat fans who are not comfortable with Justice, parts of Justice's game, need to get over it. Get over it. It's going to happen. Alex, I will let you close. You got a minute.
All right. So basically, yeah, I do agree. We haven't seen this team at its full yet. Justice is going to make a difference for sure. I still stand in mind, even with Justice back, the fact that Justice and Bam are kind of your second and third guys, love them. I really do. But in the playoffs, when it comes to that, like, you got to really bet on them being able to penetrate the defense and create their own shot every time, as well as all the creation stuff they do. But I do think because in the playoffs, like when you go against these better teams, they're going to cut off some of that stuff. I don't think the assists are going to come as easy. I don't think the offense is going to look so smooth with or without Justice, right? And I don't know, man. I just don't think they have enough counters for when their offense stops moving. Jimmy is a great counter, right? He's somebody who can do something versus a lot of players. He can back you down. He can he's a little bit of a 3-double scorer, and he's somebody who, will get you stops, will get easy layups to get you back in rhythm. That's the type of player you want. But I do think the team as a whole, even with Justice back, just isn't at that level, and that's just me projecting forward.
And that's definitely possible. I want to close with this. I think the game Saturday. Sorry about that. I think go cheer in the press box. I think
Alex.
I think the game Saturday is a good thing long term. I think this team needed to be knocked around a little bit. Things have come very easily for them early in games, particularly against bad teams, and then they've been complacent. And I think this will help them long term. I think it also helps Eric Spoelstra make rotation decisions going forward because he can point to this game and to other games that don't go so well. And I think it helps Pat Riley evaluate this team because I think if Pat Riley, okay, we've talked about 2021, but if you're looking at making changes this year, okay, or you're saying, okay, can we get there this year? I think it helps educate Pat as far as, okay, we're this far away or not this far away. If you read a lot of the stuff that Pat said over the years, he uses games like this. Whether I was surprised Spoelstra said it, but I know Riley has used games like this in the past as measuring sticks, so I think it's a positive thing. Anyway, we'll be at Heat Charlotte, but don't forget, Wednesday night, Heat Rockets, Duffy's, North Miami Beach. We went into Dade, guys, so show up, all right? Wednesday night, we'll be out there starting at about 7 o'clock. I want to tell you about a great sponsor of the 5 Reasons Sports Network, and that is East Coast Public Adjusters. East Coast Public Adjusters wants you to know there's only 10 months left to open your IRMA claim. That's right, 10 months. So call now before it is too late. 855-GET-ECPA. That's 855-GET-ECPA. You have a leaky roof, experiencing plumbing issues. These problems are most likely covered by your insurance policy. So why would you settle for less? For a free, no-obligation inspection, call East Coast Public Adjusters. They've been in business for 31 years. That's since 1988. That's right, the same year the Miami Heat were born. Here is the number again, 855-GET-ECPA, 855-GET-ECPA. Visit their website, ecpaclaims.com. Their knowledgeable staff standing by to answer all of your questions. Talk to you soon.